So you have a tender read and your love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trails and some super glamping. One idea, tip, news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints Podcast.
Sponsored by MIDLAND, communication for every adventure. The industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MYMEDIC. Sponsored by TEMBO TUSK. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DMOS Collective, mission built and made for mobility.
Sponsored by Brute Trek.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and raised on the South Shore of Massachusetts in Hanson, Mass., the beautiful home of ocean spray cranberries. And spent my childhood and adult years there until I went off to school in the University of New Hampshire up in Plymouth.
I was born and raised in Connecticut, northern Connecticut. I grew up in that area, sort of out in farm country, and mostly lived in New England for the first, 25 years. I went to college in New Hampshire and lived up in New Hampshire and Vermont. I would say I got into cycling early on, mostly because I lived in a small kind of farm town, and we used to ride to our friends that were on the other side of town. So it kind of started with commuting back and forth, maybe, 7 to 10 miles. And that's kind of how I got into cycling, I would say, in my teenage years.
Probably not all that dissimilar. Small country town, a small farm town. You had to ride a bike to get to your neighbor's house. And then, of course, you needed to have a paper route to make a couple bucks. So I started with a paper route that you'd have the big canvas bag and you'd go out and deliver papers. And then got intrigued, and the next thing I know, I picked up a unicycle and started to learn how to ride a unicycle. And then they kind of cascaded, and the next thing I knew, I was fixing bicycles for my neighbors and people who saw a little repair sign out front. So I was cycling way back when, it was 6, 8, 10.
This is fascinating. Maybe we should do this on unicycles.
We could do it on unicycles. Like There's a guy who cycled around the world on a unicycle.
Wow. Yeah. Next year.
Yeah, next year. And then when I got to college, a couple of kids I went to school with decided, just kind of like an adventure informing. We said, what are we going to do after school? And one of them suggested we ride across the country. So sure enough, we rode from Rockport, Massachusetts, out to Walla Walla, Washington, and then from Walla Walla, Washington, down to San Francisco upon graduating college. I'm retired. Full life of working, did plenty of long days, travel, and had an opportunity to retire in 2013 when my mom was a little sick, so got to spend time with her, and I don't regret a day. Don't look back at all of leaving the work life.
I am retired as well and travel full-time on the road now. I was in the restaurant business and the real estate business, and I still own a real estate company back in my former home of Connecticut. But unlike Eric, I don't regret a day of that either. My only regret, I would say, was I wish I had done it a little bit sooner. Loving it, not having to, pretty much thinking that every day is Saturday. So my answer to what this trip has to do with overlanding is very simple. And you guys have heard me talk about this a zillion times over. It doesn't matter whether it's 4 wheels or 2 wheels or body-powered pedaling or a motorcycle or a 4x4 truck. it's overlanding if you're under your own power, under your own. How would you say it? Like, you know, you're out doing your thing. You're self-supporting yourself on the road.
Yeah, we're out finding our own way, camping where we want to camp, whether we camp from a bicycle or camp from a big rig. We're out living in the land, the beautiful land, and finding the best spot with the greatest vistas and the time for us to see the scenery and relax, and most importantly, meet the people.
And in many ways, you're going to have the opportunity to see and meet people far greater at 6 miles per hour.
We're about to embark on the Baja Divide, which is a navigated route, a route that's been pre-planned, going from San Diego, California, down basically to Cabo San Lucas and doing a loop down at the southern tip of Baja Sur. The route was crafted by a couple guys, I think 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, maybe a little few more years ago than that, but I think it was a husband and wife or something.
Yes, yeah, and they've put together a detailed map highlighting waypoints on where we can get fuel and water, and highlighting stretches of giving us insight into the terrain, whether it's hilly or sandy or needs a beach, a boat portage across a bay, and it's done. I'm not sure by how many. But if we're not the first, although we are the first that we've seen on video that will be doing it on fat bikes. Most of the people do it on gravel or mountain bikes, and with varying successes. The route crisscrosses the mountainous region of Baja, and Mike and I are guessing that it's going to be somewhere between 5 to 6 crosses of the mountain range. Is it the Sierra?
Yeah, I mean, it's the bottom part of it's the Rocky Mountains that go down sort of, and it splits off the Sierra Nevada, yeah. It's I think it's about 115,000 feet of climbing over 1,700 miles, so that's better than a 2-to-1 ratio. It's a lot of people, I think that you're riding through the desert, and in many ways we are riding through the desert, but it's very mountainous in Baja.
Yep. Hey, and the mountains are going to bring us into valleys that, although it will be desert for the most part, there are oases with palm trees and running streams and springs. So I think we're going to be fascinated by the scenery and the landscape, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, the summary on the route is that it is a established route. It's probably not used a ton. I know I could tell you that I was parked down there last winter, pretty much on the route, so I did see bike packers coming by. But to say like a lot of them would be a stretch. I think that maybe I'd see 1 or 2 come through every couple of weeks, and fully loaded. You'd watch them ride by my truck. They're fully loaded, moving at the speed of backwards, and interesting. Because interesting to see these people because they're on the road long term. And many of them, by the way, do the Baja Divide and then continue on and go down the Pan American and continue on through Central America and South America, too. So it's not just doing the Baja Divide. And then on the northern part, they're working on kind of connecting the Baja Divide with the Great Divide that goes through the Rocky Mountains in the United States and then goes up to Canada.
And as Mike was saying, the terrain is so varied. The reason we've chosen fat bikes is that a large part of the ride is going to be through deep sand, for soft deep sand. And we really felt 4-inch tires were a necessity to being able to ride versus push. I think we're still going to be pushing a bike quite a bit, but we hope that our ratio of actually pedaling will be a little higher than the people who've chosen skinny tire bikes.
Yeah, just my experience from being down there is it's just so sandy, and I would say I might have done or seen maybe a third of this route out exploring primarily on my motorcycle, so I'm familiar with a lot of the different conditions in the places, and the big challenges are obviously going to be soft sand, beach sand, and sections that are very rocky. So I would agree with Eric. There's probably a fair amount of sections, even with wider tires, that you're going to do a hike-a-bike scenario. So this could be a lot of hiking involved, pushing a 100-pound bike.
The bikes we're going to be using, as we mentioned, are fat tire bikes. They're Surly Wednesdays as the model. Mike has done a lot of research on it. It was, to be honest, I was a little disappointed we were going to have to get fat tire bikes because I had a whole fleet of other bicycles, including mountain bikes, and I was hopeful that we could have used one of those. However, quickly after researching it, it was obvious it was going to be really challenging, almost impossible to do it on a skinny tire bike. So after Mike did all his researches, he suggested to me that we go visit a bike shop down outside of Boston and look for bicycles. And then Mike and I drove down, and what happened, Mike?
Well, we drove down there, and in fairness, like Eric said, we both have a number of other bicycles, and we kind of hope to use other things. And our background is more in gravel and road riding. So having neither one of us ever really owning a fat bike, we went down to this bike shop in Boston, and I don't know, it turns into looking at bikes to purchasing bikes. And then, of course, that translates into, now you got the bike, and now you need the gear and the bags and the racks and it's never ending, really. And
just like in the overlanding world, equipment's key, and you don't want equipment to fail when you're out in the middle of nowhere. And Mike takes his equipment real serious, so we did not just purchase bikes, we did multiple upgrades to make sure that we had the best drivetrains, the best brake system, and really went through these fat bikes and upgraded them to a standard that we felt would be capable of doing the Baja Divide.
And the downside of them is that initially when we started looking, common sense will tell you, let's go find the lightest bikes we can find, because weight is always going to be the enemy, right? So we were looking at, carbon fiber fat bikes. I even found one that I think there was 18 pounds, and then we looked at titanium. We looked at all this stuff, and then at the end of the day, we realized, in reading and watching a ton of YouTube, that the structure of the bike is actually more important. It's got to be able to carry a ton of weight, and B, it's got to be pretty rugged to go over these conditions. And thirdly, it needs to have what they call braze-ons, which are little attachment points on the bike, so you can mount all this gear. Well, the carbon fiber bikes really can't support the weight. They don't have the braze-ons. And the titanium bikes are few and far between. There was a really tough time finding them. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up with these Surleys called Wednesday, because I guess any day is a good day to ride a bike. And they have lots of braze-ons and lots of attachment points. But the downside is, stock, this bike weighs like 36 pounds with nothing on it, which is heavy.
Yep. And then we add some racks, and quickly we're up in 50 pounds. Then we start to fill the panniers, and before we knew it, we were north of 100 pounds. How did this happen? It's a great question, and one that makes us reflect on kind of where we've been, but more importantly, where we're going. And where we're going is hopefully to finish out, to continue to do adventures. And adventures, as Mike said, can take a lot of different shapes and sizes. This adventure spawned because, as you know, Michael spends the winters down in Baja, and cycling and backpacking seemed to be real intriguing. And there's a few designated routes throughout the world, but getting to them in the time of year they require just didn't fit into my schedule, nor his schedule. When we discovered the Baja Divide, to me it was a no-brainer. That's the adventure we had to do. Cycling during the winter season, down the Baja Peninsula to where Michael's going to be anyways. So I did a little bit of research, very little, and tossed the question over to Mike saying, how about it? Let's ride the Baja Divide. Knowing that neither of us has done any bike backpacking, but knowing that we do know how to ride bikes, so I figured we were capable and ready.
And I promptly said, yeah, no, I don't think so. That just sounds like a terrible idea. And I was sitting in Baja at the time, enjoying my beautiful view of the ocean, and And he had emailed me, and I looked through I think he sent me a video that's probably online and some details, and I kind of, figured that he'd, eventually forget about the idea. And then, many months later, after returning back to the States and coming back here east, and then we ride during the summer months, and then, we get back here, and he says, so, what do you think about the Baja Divide? I don't know how it turned from that into us going to buy bikes, but see, it's kind of like a snowball. I think once we bought the bikes, now it's like, well, we got to do it. Yeah. And then, of course, now that we've told, several 100,000 people that we're doing it, I guess we have to. But that's kind of where it originated. It was really more of an avalanche than a snowball. Yeah. It was. Once that thing picked up speed, there was no stopping it. And I mean, from my perspective, the COVID situation and my travels around the world were delayed, and that kind of kept me in North America and kind of stationary, rotating between Mexico in the winter and back in the States in the summer. So I felt like the situation hadn't improved enough to continue on down the Pan-American Highway. So this kind of delays it another year, and it gives me the opportunity to try a new adventure, I guess. So, sometimes it's the motorcycle, sometimes the truck, and now it's going to be a fat bike. And I'd be remiss not to point out that Linda, my wife, kind of was hopeful that the idea would lose steam, and it would never occur. But much to her surprise, it picked up steam. It didn't lose steam. And proud owners of Surly Wednesdays and all the paraphernalia that goes with them, come January, we're pedaling. So to outline the Baja Divide, the conditions on the route, people don't realize that it's actually pretty varied. So over its 1,700-mile course from San Diego down to the tip of the southern tip of Baja, you go through varying degrees of elevation, which changes the scenery, and it changes what the conditions on the road surface. So let's backtrack a little bit. 96% of this route is off pavement, first off. And then the second portion of this is much of it is off what I would call improved gravel roads, because most of Baja, there's only got really 2 paved roads in all of the Baja Peninsula, the 2 states. Most of the side roads are all dirt roads. And much of this route is not even on dirt roads. It's off on, some of it is where they run the Baja 1000, the race. And some of it is just single track, backpack, just track or old abandoned roads that aren't there anymore. So it varies. The terrain is extremely rugged. There's a lot of steep climbs. There's a lot of heavy sand. There is one section, I think it's almost 3 days of riding along what I would consider to be the beach. There is a section that we actually have to take, find a fisherman to take you across to a peninsula where there really is no access whatsoever from vehicle standpoint. And then we have to ride along that, which I think is probably a 2-day ride to get out of the peninsula. And accordingly, it has no services. So we have to carry all of our food and water for those 2 to 4 day stretches based on how quickly we ride and how long it is before we get to the next area to resupply. And the temperatures at the beginning when we start. So this is January, and January, one of the advantages about Baja and the reason that a lot of overlanders go down to Baja in the winter is that it's pretty consistent weather. But most of the people go down as far south as you can go, which is south of the Tropic of Cancer, actually. So it's about on par with, Cuba. Havana, Cuba is about the same latitude. But north of that, obviously starting in San Diego, it can be quite cool and cold even at nighttime. Baja is fairly arid, but it's not going to be unheard of to potentially have rain, and some people that have been doing the Baja Divide have even reported snow. Yep. So at higher elevations. So the conditions can be pretty bad. Hopefully, fingers crossed, We don't see too much of wet because the rain is really difficult there. Even just recently, within the last couple of weeks, Baja is susceptible to hurricanes in August and September, and they had a storm go through this season, and that oftentimes wipes out roads, even established roads, but it certainly causes wipeouts and washouts that aren't fixed for years, if ever.
And the rain quickly turns into our worst nightmare, which is mud.
Yeah.
And the mud that can mire a big, huge rig like this will just devastate our fat bikes because it clogs up the brakes, the wheels stop turning, they stop shifting, and the brakes stop working. So mud will be a delay in our whole process. I don't know how long we'll have to wait, but we won't be able to ride through mud.
Not if it's wet. And the other thing, a factor that is unrideable, the prevailing wind in Baja is generally north to south. It blows down the peninsula, comes down the Sierra Cortez. And I know I can tell you from last winter's experience, it shifted a few times. Very rare. It's very rare to have the wind blowing out of the south. But if it does, it's almost unrideable because we might as well be riding, hot air balloons. Yeah. They're just so heavy and so wind resistant that, an average wind speed, I think in most of the peninsula is like 14 to 20 miles an hour on a daily basis. So you can get winds not unheard of. I saw them at 30, 40, 50 miles an hour blowing. Pretty common. It's a very windy climate. So if they're, hopefully we're hoping the wind, we got a tailwind the whole way. Yeah. But we'll see what happens with that.
Once we got pedaling, and we've already talked about what it's going to take to get up the hills and down the hills and over the rocks and through the sand, but we're going to do it. It may be challenging. We're going to do it. We're going to be stopping at any restaurants that we see, and we're going to be delightful on whatever they sell, and we're going to love whatever they sell. But there are going to be times that we're going to be cooking on our own. So we'll be carrying stoves, food that will be for emergency rations, food that we pick up at tiendas and stores and markets. And I'm sure that our diet will be quick to prepare foods such as ramen noodles and other fast cutting serving.
I mean, the problem is that the resupply points are probably on average, what would you say, every 3 to 5 days.
Yes.
And when I say resupply points, you're crossing potentially the Transpeninsular Highway, Route 1, going down, weaves back and forth, and you'll have to ride, slightly off course to get to a little village. But these are not grocery stores. These are, usually small tienda kind of places. We'll be eating a lot of tortillas and beans in a bag. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, like Eric said, if we're in town and there's an opportunity to find a restaurant or something, that'll be a priority for sure. And certainly, sleeping arrangements, if you're in a town that has, some kind of shelter or hotel or something of the sort, then we'll elect for that. But primarily, it's tents, jet boil. And I'm going to have a jet boil for cooking.
Inflatable mattresses.
Water, right?
Yep. Inflatable mattresses that are suspect to puncture because of the abundance of cactus. Yep. So a patch kit. First aid, because we're sure that there are going to be cuts and bruises and not too many snake bites. But we'll be prepared for we are prepared for first aid and some level of emergency attention.
The focus, though, is that you got to carry everything that you need. So it's an assortment of food, the cooking gear, which is really basic because it's going to be jet boil. We might be able to make some powdered, coffee in the morning or something.
Yep.
The tents are lightweight. To say it's a tent is kind of a stretch almost. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a two-person tent. We each have a two-person tent. I don't know. I don't think you could even fit two people in mine. They're made to be super lightweight. So all of our stuff, in my feeling, is it's very lightweight. It's kind of expensive for what you get, mm-hmm. and it's probably also not that rugged. I mean, nothing's too rugged.
Nope.
Because it would be heavy then. So the challenge, I think, is that we got to be able to repair stuff. you know, whether the tent gets rips or the air mattress or the bike. So
yeah.
that's the other thing we're carrying is, you know,
we have replacement parts for all of our high-risk items. We have tools that we feel will get us through a pretty major repair. So we've tried our best, and as we mentioned earlier, we're putting on the best components that we think are out there to reduce our likelihood of breakdowns. But we know there'll be mechanical breakdowns and, unfortunately, probably tire punctures.
Tires a big concern.
Yep.
Because they're 4-inch tires, so they take a lot of air. So I bought a high volume, you know, pump. We're going to have...
We've converted them to tubeless, which is key. You know,
you can't do it without tubeless.
A lot of bike tires run tubes, like cars used to, but they do offer tubeless options. We have tubeless options where if it's not a huge puncture, the liquid inside the tire will self-seal. So,
if it does not, is where you run into big problems with a 4-inch tire and that volume. If it goes totally flat, trying to get it re-aired up is extremely difficult without having some kind of, you know, compressor or something. So we could run into problems with that.
But we have a plug kit as well. So we have plug kits for the tires, patch kits for the tires, Michael's high volume pump that he mentioned,
extra sealant. We're carrying sealant. So some of these things are what adds the weight, because people are going to ask, I think, well, God, you guys seem like you're overpacked. Why are you carrying so much stuff?
Yeah.
But really, you know, the liquids in particular, like sealant, like you know, the fuel for the jet fuel, things like that. They're not that. They're just simply not that light.
And the biggie that we haven't talked about is water. So we'll be carrying in some stretches water to cook, water to drink, water if we have an abundance to clean. We're going to be carrying in some cases 10 to 13 liters of water each.
That is, I mean, I think we estimated at 20, we could be carrying between 25 and 30 pounds of water. So, you know, because if you've got a drink, and I found there were days down there in that arid climate where you drink a gallon of water a day, not really even exercising. So you figure if you're out on a bike somewhere between maybe 5 to 10 hours a day riding, you could be burned through. I could easily see going through 2 gallons of water per person a day. And if you went through that much water, think about it, if you had to go 3 days without a resupply on water, how much water you got to carry. So that's I think water is the biggest challenge. Well, I'm going to rephrase that. Water is the second biggest challenge doing this trip.
And what's the first?
Well, really the first I have a couple ideas. No, really the first challenge is our bodies. For real. I mean, it's the sheer endurance that you're going to have to overcome to be able to ride what could be, like I said, 5 to 10 hours a day, targeting between 30 and 50 miles a day on a fat bike through really bad conditions for 45 to 60 days in a row.
With 100 pounds, weighing over 100 pounds.
Yeah. That's
a challenge.
Wear and tear on your body that can't be underestimated. Now we laugh because there's a few other things from my perspective that, I'm not a big camper. This is by far, I would say, I'm speaking for me, probably Eric's going to be in the same boat, I'm thinking, but this is by far probably the hardest thing that I'm ever chosen to do, both mentally and physically, I think. I mean, from a physical perspective, riding 1,700 miles with a 100-pound bike, and potentially pushing it 1,000 of those miles, is in desert climate and adverse conditions is going to be super physically taxing. But the mental side of this, I'm not a big camper. I've stayed in a tent, a dozen times in the last 25 years probably. Like, tent camping isn't my thing. It's the reason I have a store in Stevenson and converted an old military truck so I can have a shower. And, so my mindset right now is, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 months. I really don't have showers. I don't have my bed. I don't have my TEMBO TUSK that I can cook on. and make food all the time. It's like, my loves in life are like food and showers and a nice bed.
Yep.
You know, really.
And maybe a cerveza here or there.
And at the end of the day, you know, roll into camp and maybe have a cerveza or something. And you know, holy hell, is anybody going to want to carry a 12-ounce can of beer? It's way too much. So, and people have told me that the mental game on this, to me, I think the mental game is going to be worse than the physical game. Eric and I ride thousands and thousands of miles a year.
Yes, yep. So the ability to ride 1,700 on normal conditions would not be challenging.
Not really.
No, but now when you add all of these factors in, I agree. It's going to be difficult. Now I'm not swayed. I'm still super enthusiastic, and I can't wait to get started. And I'm sure we will prevail. But that's not to say that there aren't going to be some days that are really low, really, really low. But I think strongly there are going to be an equal number of days that'll be really, really high, and they are going to make it worthwhile.
So we have Ollie Optimistic on one side, and we have Mr. Realism over here.
Well, it's going to be type 2. There'll be days that we just hate it, and we wish we never and we wish we never decided to do it, and it's going to be torture. But by the time that day's done and we've had our ramen noodles or tortilla with Nutella on it, we're going to be thinking, man, life is good, and that was a good day.
I mean, I certainly hope for that. But the mental game, I think. Let's assume, you know, so we start out of San Diego and you spend the first 5 days riding uphill, basically. So the first 5 days are gaining elevation. You know, if you can get through that hump, and then I said to Eric the other day, I said, well, great, 5 days of climbing uphill, and then you're going to get 5 days, the following 5 days going downhill, and I feel like, wow, that's going to be positive, but I'm already feeling like it's not going to be as positive as I think it is. 5 days going downhill, it's not even going to seem like downhill, and at the end of 10 days, it's like that's where your breaking point's going to be at, because you're going to be like, wow. And people have said, like, the middle section, when you're not close enough to the end and you're farther away from the beginning, where you got adrenaline and excitement, is where your mental game is at its lowest point. And, you know, most of the people that I've looked at that have done this route on YouTube and have written about it and stuff, well, I would tell you there's a very high percentage of them that did not succeed in completing the route. And some of them have tried it 2 or 3 times.
Yep, that's true. I remain super optimistic that we will do it, and we'll do it well. We may not set a land speed record, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of times that we're going to be hiking a bike and pushing up mountains and cursing and being pretty down in the dumps. But I think we'll do it. However, a health catastrophe could curtail the trip for one or both of us. And equally, a bike catastrophe that we just can't remedy could possibly put an end to the trip for one or both of us. So
some of the backups is, well, let's start out at the top. We're carrying a Garmin InReach, so which has SOS function on it. So in the event that a catastrophic situation happens, you know, we can hit our SOS button. It has satellite texting capability, so we can communicate with the outside world. And much of this probably will be off cellular and off grid. You know, certainly things that you prepare, but you know it has enough crossing points on this route that if we had a major mechanical or a major health situation, you could bail out on or get to a facility. But let's not beat around the bush. This is very remote. I mean, the 2 states of Baja are definitely the most remote states in all of Mexico. There's very little population down there. Even the cities, there's few and far between. The cities are very small. You've got La Paz and you've got Cabo San Jose at the bottom, and you got Ensenada maybe, but they're, you know, that's it. Most of the time you're far away from civilization, so there's not a lot of opportunity. So from a safety conscious, my goal would be to, and I told Eric, is like, ride this as slow as humanly possible, meaning like try not to exert yourself ever, because it's not going to be worth it to go up a hill, half a mile an hour faster, get a little tired. This is cumulative, because I don't see a lot of recovery action going on in this, because, speaking for myself, getting in that little tent, not having a great meal, not having a great shower, the mindset, both physically and mentally, is there's not a lot of recovery action going on, so it's going to be cumulative.
Yeah. And on the support side of the house, we talked long and hard about trying to arrange to have a sag wagon or a support vehicle, which logistically wasn't going to work out. However, the overland community that you're a big part of is going to be aware and present and to some extent, and we always have phone a friend options. So because of our contact base, there are people out there that might be within reach that could help us avert something that could be catastrophic. So we have in reach for some true serious emergency, but then we have some interim steps that before we get to in reach. And I think the overland community and our friends and family are going to play a big role in that.
Because there's a lot of people over the course of the winter. So we're doing this between January 1st and March 1st. So it's really January, February. So there's a lot of overland traffic in Baja during those times. A lot of people, a lot of influx coming down from the United States. So, like Eric said, we can do a lot of phone a friends. Hey, we have a real tire problem. We need extra so and so. Can we get this brought in from Phoenix or Tucson or San Diego or something? So there's definitely those options. And I have a fair amount of people that I know that live down particularly in the southern state. So I think as we get more towards the ultimate destination, which really finishes at my truck, we'll have more of a support team out there. But we had really, like he said, we looked at trying to get a follow wagon or a chase car. But the reality is that much of this route is not really accessible by vehicle, even four-wheel drive vehicle, and where it is accessible, it wouldn't really eliminate. We would still be carrying the vast majority of stuff and the weight, so it almost wasn't. It wasn't realistic.
We're gonna. Mike might have mentioned earlier that we'll be riding around 4 to 12 miles an hour. Maybe if it's a real steep pitch, we could get up to 15, but for the most part, we're going to be riding pretty slow. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of scenic vistas that we're going to miss. In addition to just visually seeing what's out there are a lot of missionaries that we aren't going to ride by. There's some hot springs that we're not going to ride by. There are these palm tree oases that I've mentioned a few times that are spring-fed rivers that we will definitely stop and see the highlights that Baja has to offer, which are many. And the route that we've mentioned before has highlighted all of them. So we have waypoints that we can see as we go down.
A lot of fishing villages, a lot of different things. Like he said, the missions are pretty highlighted on this route. So there's a lot of old architecture to see. A lot of beach riding, honestly, a lot of scenic beach riding, both on the Pacific side and on the Sea of Cortez side. So there's going to be, there's a lot of stuff to see. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And we laugh, but, at 4, 5, 6 miles an hour, boy, you're not going to miss anything. You're going to see everything because it's going to feel like you're never getting there. So throughout Baja, there's a lot of, through their history, the church went in and tried to spread Christianity throughout the native population down in Mexico. So there's a lot of missions that were built, and it's interesting to see some of these things because they're out in the middle of nowhere, and you'll be riding along, and all of a sudden there's this beautiful building that looks like it popped up in the center of Paris or in London or somewhere, and it's most of them or many of them are abandoned. Very well preserved because it's desert, environment. So there's not very little water down there, and just beautiful stuff. So, and there's a lot of them. They're dotted throughout the whole peninsula. So we'll definitely be checking those out.
And old.
And old, yeah. I think a lot of them were built in the. Don't quote me on this. I would say they were all between like probably the 1600s and the 1800s. I would say.
Yeah. So the fat bikes that we've talked about a few times are going to be loaded with bags, and the bags are called panniers. We have front panniers, two in the front and two in the back. We have a frame bag that sits in the triangle of the bike, and we have a handlebar bag in addition to a top tube bag. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bags on the bikes. We're trying to find the best way to fill those bags, a most efficient way. One pannier will be dedicated to no more riding, time to camp, and that will have sleeping bags in it, pillows, tents, all the things for camp life. A second pannier will most likely be time to eat, and that will be cook kits, food, all the things that we need when it's time to eat. The frame bag in the middle is going to be filled with tools and electronic equipment, depending on whose bike you're talking about. And then that leaves a front pannier bag for clothing, of which clothing is going to be pretty slim. We aren't bringing much clothes. We're bringing mountain bike cycling shorts with padded shorts that can double as casual wear. We're bringing merino wool shirts, and merino wool we selected because it doesn't smell when you haven't bathed recently, and you don't sweat a lot in it. So it's good for cold and warm weather. And we have a backup pair of cycling shoes, which will be Crocs, but we'll be wearing cycling shoes for the daytime and Crocs for the evening. For our hats, we're going to be having protection from sun in more of a African safari-style hat in addition to our cycling helmets. And then we obviously have backups for rain gear and cold weather, puffy coats. And I think that pretty much covers our regular clothes. And then on the front bag, we'll also have emergency supplies as far as first aid kits and patch kits and all of the things that could go wrong with bike or body. And I didn't talk about the electronics, but there's an awful lot of electronics just for cycling as well as other things.
Yeah, I mean, the electronic part of this, obviously we have our bike computers that, have our GPS on them. The route is all loaded into it, so we're following a route. And then we have our cell phones, which nowadays have translated into great cameras. We're going to be shooting this for a YouTube series, so I am going real minimal with camera gear. It's going to be 2 GoPros and my DJI Mini 2 drone to get some footage from up above, but that's as light as I can get. But as you guys out there know, there's still batteries involved with that, so we got to be able to recharge batteries. I've got some basic little rollout Go Power solar, charging port kind of power packs. I think we both going to carry an extra 1 or if not 2 power packs. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to recharge your cell phone, recharge the bike computer. Our bikes are electronic shifting, so we have batteries that run the transmission of the bike. So that has to be charged. I'm just trying to think, is anything else that's got to get charged? Really, the camera gear. I mean, the goal I have is to have enough battery backup probably on board that once we go through a village or a town somewhere every 3 to 5 days, we can probably recharge all of our batteries because the solar capability of recharging stuff while we're riding is not going to be great, I don't think. So that's going to be a challenge a little bit.
Now, don't forget our pump to pump up our mattress and our pillows, because I'm not going to be blowing that thing up all that time.
Oh, and my electric toothbrush, because I really like an electric toothbrush. So I probably got that. But that's kind of like where the power stuff comes in. My only thing I would add to clothing is it's to emphasize what Eric said. The clothing pack is going to be really minimal. a couple shirts, a couple shorts, maybe one pair of like pull-on over long pants kind of thing. My concern definitely if it's cold is you're probably going to put every single piece of clothing that you got on board on at the same time because really we don't have a lot of cold weather gear because it's just heavy and bulky. All right, so something I'm doing a little bit different with this filming because I film, various YouTube series and things about my truck and motorcycling and everything else. So my limitation on the Baja Divide trip is going to be the equipment that I use. The goal is going to be we're going to film on a daily basis, and we are going to track our life on the road throughout the entire thing. So both the riding aspects of it, the things that we see, and honestly the behind-the-scenes moments where we're pissed off, ugly, and want to throw our tent down a gorge. So all of that is, I don't want to say it's a reality show, but it's going to have that little bit of that theme. We're going to get a lot of footage. I have some backups that I'm carrying so I can, back up the footage that is shot. Whether or not the series goes live while we're on the route or not is going to be sort of determined in the moment. So you can expect I will put together probably a pretty comprehensive series of YouTube videos, probably 20 to 40 videos. So it's going to be broken down, maybe cover, 2 or 3 days at a time. How live that is going to depend on our ability to upload when we come through populated areas. So my prediction at this point is that we'll be putting up stuff, slightly behind on a delayed basis, but I do think that the beginning content is going to come out while we're still on the trip. So that is the goal of doing this. And Eric and I will both be shooting footage using, like I said, a combination of GoPros, iPhones, and the drone.
Well, this whole event, I think, is going to be life-changing for both of us. We still haven't figured out how that's going to be life-changing, but we know it will be. So I'm thinking that a logical next step, since we'll have driven the Baja Divide in the big rig, we'll have ridden the Baja Divide on cycles, is we're probably going to kayak the Sea of Cortez alongside the Baja Peninsula. To me, that's a logical thing to do afterwards.
Does my face look like I just heard that for the first time? Or not? You guys be the judge.
And if for some reason that doesn't pan out, there's always the Continental Divide or the Silk Road, or there's another divide that maybe we'll have to figure out our own.
We've definitely had it. We had a couple friends do the Silk Road gravel course in I can't remember the country.
Kazakhstan.
It's one of the stans. Kazakhstan or something. But that looked pretty brutal. My feeling is that we'll see what happens. But my gut feeling tells me I want to use the bike not for more than just a 2-month trip. Now that we've got all this equipment, my dual purpose is great though. I was actually talking about this with you last night. Is that I have all of the gear by just the definition of buying it, and getting the tents and the sleeping pads and the jet boil and all this stuff. I now have a multi-use for it because that easily going to load up onto the KTM adventure bike. So I can definitely take the motorcycle out and do some multi-day trips with that. So we'll see what happens.
Sea of Cortez, I'll be y'all cameraman. I'll be your cameraman. I won't have to pick up a camera. I'll do that.
You know who brought that up? Sue and Bill, the people that they want us to meet when we go out there. Their buddy just did it.
Did they do it? I didn't even know it was ever done.
Yeah. He said, I'm talking to him the other night, and they go, he kayaked the Sea of Cortez. I said, I want to do that.
As soon as you said it, I was like, I'm in on that.
Yeah.
The way the current works and the wind works is when you start at the top, it's going to take you most of the way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can go along. There's a ton of islands to check out. There's all sorts of cool stuff. You don't have to. And what's nice about that's even more supported than the bike thing because you dock
Where you want to.
multitude of villages and things to dock. So that your chances of actually finding hotels and food and stuff is way higher.
Linda will probably do it.
kayak than
Linda
it is
will
on the
do
bike.
it now.
A bigger group, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have any problem getting a group to do that.
Yeah. Well, we talked to Bill and Sue, and they said, "Oh yeah, this guy did it."
It's
And we're
quite a
saying,
distance, though.
I wanted to find a route. I go, but I guess there really isn't one. You just keep the water, keep the land on your right.
So we so the YouTube series on the Baja Divide that we're going to be producing is actually already started. We made our first video talking about testing, I guess, testing equipment and practicing one day. No, I'm going to cover all the lead up to it. I'm going to be shooting a bunch of videos on the actual bike and equipment, talking about what gear we've chosen and why. We're going to talk about when we fly into, because ultimately we're both going to fly into San Diego and start. The route starts in San Diego, so you'll see us on the ground there and getting last-minute supplies in San Diego and getting our bikes tuned up at the bike shop and everything. So it's going to be cover us all the way basically from today. And we're like 2 months out?
Mhm.
Three months.
3 months out
right now. About 90 days out. We're going to start filming now. And it's going to take us all the way through the course till we finish. And we're going to, by the way, have I'll call it a finishing party at the Coral Reef in Cabo Pomo at the end. So, and all the overlanders and people that I know down there are certainly welcome, but we'll probably end up having a pretty good party with some good food and some cervezas and margaritas. So to follow along on our Baja Divide trip, check us out on drivetheglobe.com, and on there I've created a section that's going to do the backgrounds on Eric and I, the equipment and everything else, and that's where we'll be posting videos and updates, certainly through any of our social medias at Drive the Globe.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.